What's up, Team KBA? Now, I've been living in Brussels, Belgium for the past couple of months, making it my home base to travel out around Europe for some Formula One projects. Le Castellet in the south of France, beautiful. I was staying in Saint-Cyr-sur-Mer with a beach, awesome place, and also great opener into my first experience in live motorsports and particular Formula One. And then I headed out to Zandvoort for the Dutch Grand Prix, which was insane energy, where Max Verstappen won his home Grand Prix. And then I rounded off my triple header at Monza, the Italian Grand Prix, and you just cannot beat the passion energy of the Tifosi fans, especially the podium celebrations. And if you're not familiar with Tifosi, they are the Ferrari fans, and they just stormed the track right at the end, even though Leclerc was so close to making it a home Grand Prix win. But to bring it all back into today's video, I want to share what it's been like staying in a co-living shared house accommodation here in Brussels, but also tie in a few other places where I have co-lived. And if you're not familiar, or if it's the first time you're hearing of co-living, it is a great and alternate option to not only traveling around, but if you're looking to stay somewhere a little bit longer, compared to, say, a guest house, and you do want greater facilities, but something that's a bit more affordable on a long-term basis, co-living is a great choice and something you should definitely look into. And hopefully, sharing my experience, it will weigh up a lot of the pros, observations, and just some things to bear in mind if you are considering to co-live in the near future or on your next travel adventures. Co-living has been a rising option as accommodation stays that should make it either more affordable or a better quality of life for the kind of money that you are spending, especially in more expensive cities. But I'll also share some observations, as there are some exceptions where the trends are a little bit different, or co-living as an ideal concept is done in a different way. So firstly, what is co-living? Essentially, it's a shared accommodation, something you'll be very familiar with if you've ever stayed in a guest house. It's probably as close to that as possible. But if you've shared a house with anyone outside of your family, maybe it was at university, where it does differ is the kind of service you get and the access to the type of properties that you normally won't find on the market. You will find some providers, and in Brussels it's cohabs. There's one or two that I know of. There might be more. The other is called just shared homes. They are essentially a property service that owns a variety of properties. And in Brussels, I think there's more than 50 in lots of different locations around Brussels that give different vibes, different facilities, different locations, and also different prices. And in Brussels, it's pretty well set up, a lot easier to discover them than, say, in London, where the options are fewer and the prices are a lot more on the premium luxury end rather than as a more accessible means. I'm staying in Schaerbeek, and it's run by cohabs. Tying in my 3-month experiences, it's honestly been very smooth. I've spoken with some of my housemates where the lead time to searching, inquiring, and just the overall process leasing before we actually arrive, and that depends on the seasonality and the demand. So I came in the summer where most of the people actually leave, and I had plenty of choice to choose from, and I was able to move in very quick. Whereas in some other countries, or in Brussels, towards August, September onwards, there's a lot more demands, a lot more people inquiring, and you'll find it's a bit more hard pressed. So depending on your dates, you might have an experience where it's taking a lot longer to inquire or try and secure a place. But luckily, there's plenty of properties within cohabs, so within their own network, you most likely will find something, and you can move between the two houses, stay in one and want to move to another for various reasons. Very smooth. Coming over from London, I decided to just get the bus, the Flix bus, because I was carrying a little bit more luggages. And also I moved in that same weekend that I was searching, so the Eurostar was very expensive. But if you're able to plan in advance, say maybe at least a month from now, then the Eurostar is a lot cheaper, roughly 50 euros you can find it. Coach, Flixbus, very cheap. Even if you're looking to ride out a couple of days or even 1 or 2 days from when you're booking, and it's affordable just to add in extra luggage. So that was my first time using that experience. It was very hit and miss, But again, I'll share that in another video. I did get here safely. And what I saw advertised on coliving.com, which is a great resource to check out if you're new to co-living like I was, and you're trying to get a lot more options or views of what kind of places you can find around the world, basically like Airbnb, and hopefully it becomes a lot more populated with properties. But from there on, I was able to have a direct connection and communication with Cohabs, and then be a bit more bespoke in what exactly I was looking for. And everything was done online. I had one interview, which is basically just them getting to know you, sort of your reasons, aspirations, why you're looking to move into co-living, and also your length of stay. And then they will just come back with what's workable, what is available, and if you have any particular requests with room features, the house features, and so forth. So I actually found that very smooth. It was really quick, and I was on the board to sign a contract. And once I had a look at the lease, which was very reasonable, in my case, you have at least within the first 2 weeks where you can sort of cancel it, since these are more longer stay contracts. But in my particular case, it was 3 months, and they were able to do that. More often than not, you'll find it could be 6 months, it could be longer, but it becomes rolling after that, and you can extend it. But if you're looking to cancel on a longer period, like 6 months, then you just confirm 2 months in advance that you are going to leave at the end of your contract. So if it was a 6-month contract, after 4 months, you can notify them, and that will give them the 2 months notice, so you can leave exactly on the 6 months. But if not, then you can organize a new contract or have it rolling. I'm not sure on that. But in my case, a 3-month contract, after 2 months, I confirmed that I was not renewing, or I didn't suggest I was going to extend. And then that meant after 3 months, like this week, I'm going to be leaving and saying farewell to Cohabs in Brussels. So that's a little bit of the admin details out of the way. You do have to provide a deposit with Cohabs. There's other places in co-living I searched where you don't have to provide a deposit, or you can pay at the property. So the deposit was 1.5 months rent. And then I just bank transferred. And for me, living in the UK, or anyone from the UK or Europe that's looking to make those purchases, I used Wise. You can also use Revolut. It just makes it a lot cheaper for sending off payments to European countries and banks, and the process was very smooth. Most of the time it was within the day, but if it's over the weekend, if you do on a Friday or Saturday, it will be submitted on the Monday. Everything's done online, very seamless, very smooth. Sign the contracts, and yeah, my contract activated from when I arrived. Speaking with other housemates, depending on how peak season, you might be more restricted to the actual days, so they would be more hard deadlines, whereas mine was it would just kick in when I arrived at the 3-month contract. Now, my impressions when I first arrived into Cohabs, what I saw is what you get, but also doesn't do enough justice to the high quality co-living accommodations that I found through Cohabs. The price that you would pay in London, even if you rack up the budgets for studio apartment, it just wasn't really worth it. Looked around Europe to see what else was available, and not only are the prices a lot less, and that definitely depends where you're looking. For example, Paris would be similar to London or a little bit less, but in Brussels it was a lot more affordable, and the value for money was a lot better. And I just really liked the kind of places on offer, the character. This is, I believe, an 18th or 19th century building, 5 floors in the house with 22, 23 housemates, but it's huge. So there's many days that you might just not see other people because you have different timelines and schedules. But the communal areas, especially the kitchen, the living room, are really amazing, and a big garden that if you were to look at how much this would cost in the UK, it would just be crazy expensive, or you just wouldn't really find it. So for me, co-living in Brussels, just access to the kind of accommodations you get and great value for money. And then it gets to your room size. Like I mentioned, there's 22 rooms in my particular property. There's an actual back house, so there's 4 there and 18 here. They all have different prices depending on your room size and the features. So I went for a slightly bigger room. Some options where you can have pretty much your own contained like apartment within the house, including toilets, or you can have shared facilities, both the showers and the toilets. So really just depends on your style of living and also your budget, but you'll find many options within a house to suit you. So the house itself, beautiful, 100% love it. And there's also many amazing properties around Brussels as well. So you definitely want to just explore the many choices on offer, and hopefully in other countries, you might find that there's a few properties either by the same provider, the brand, or just within the country. And that really does depend on the culture or just how big co-living as an ideal concept is in there. There are other countries that are maybe a lot more advanced, and I think in Brussels it's quite a fleshed out system here, which is great, versus other countries where there's very few, or it's still an upcoming thing, or it's still quite exclusive. So like say in London, I think there's a lot more choice in the US, in Canada when I looked in Toronto, and there's a lot more affordable options when you look in Asia. But Japan also has some really cool places if you want a more higher end accommodation. So yeah, I love the variety of it, and I think the spread is still developing in terms of price points and affordability and the quality, both for the lower, mid, and the higher end price brackets. But I'd love to see it become an increasing presence around the world. And I also think it's a great untapped market where you can just give yourself a lot more quality, a lot more settled sort of vibe, rather than a high rotation that you get from a guest house, and also comforts, and also just hotels really just being a short stay sort of place. What can you expect if you're going into a co-living shared accommodation? Honestly, it's not really that much different. If you have shared with people before, it's really just having that same courtesy of respecting others, respecting common spaces, tidying up after you, and doing your part if you need to, when it comes to cleaning up. And also when it comes to noise, which can be hit or miss. Also, just if you're looking for more of a closer vibe of really building good, solid connections. In Cohabs, they do have cleaning services weekly for the common spaces, and also removing some of your rubbish in your rooms. But for everything else, like your own room and other smaller parts, then it's down to you as housemates to keep the place tidy. If you've got that pretty much in order, then you'll have a great living space. And then it's really just connecting with your housemates, doing stuff together to really build and form those bonds, or just for day-to-day stuff, having a coffee, sitting here for drinking, working in a table space, or having house dinners that we do. Or we actually just had movie night last night, since one of our other housemates moved to another Cohabs property, and also because I'm leaving this week. Just little moments like that can really just spruce up your co-living experience, and one that I look back on. Cohabs, Brussels, Belgium, and the people that I've met really fondly. And what I like about co-living, the reason why I chose co-living, ended up here, is just being able to socialize, network, have small chats, or do these kind of things with people that I'm sharing the house with, and not having to go through to great lengths to try and, make new friends, settle, and having to go to a cafe, dinner, or do some of those bigger things. I quite like just having those day-to-day interactions. Hey, how are you? Cooking in the kitchen, other people preparing their food, or just eating and they're joining you, and you're just having some small chats before you carry on with your day. Being on your own makes it a lot harder for you to just want to connect with people, do stuff, and just having those small interactions. So I really like that, and it was the biggest reason why I wanted to choose living in a co-living space, with the kind of people as well that can change the whole culture of what the house is like. So definitely where I am staying, it's a lot more on the settled parts. Like there are people who do like to go out on the weekends, and it's understandable. So you don't want to be that like nagging Nancy to always tell people to quieten down when it is the weekend. As long as it's just reasonable, or it's not crazy late and you're blaring music, then you have every right to just tell everyone to tone it down. For us, we're a lot more settled. People understand, you're doing your own stuff, and you got your own routines. So it's quite nice that you can really feel at home. Where having a service like cohabs can maybe help or be different to other co-living spaces is the amount of properties that they do have around Brussels. They also have in Paris and opened up in New York, and more properties opening up in Brussels. That can help if you find, maybe your lifestyle, what you like to do is very different from your other housemates, and you want to just explore another house which might be more in tune with how you like to do stuff. So if you're a lot more social, a lot more outgoing, and you want to do stuff as a house together more, then you might find that in other properties. But if you find yourself, you want more of a quietened place, really like your privacy, people respect that a lot. And then you can also find those kind of houses too. Also just more flexible agreements. That is definitely good to look at before you sign. So depending on your flexibility you need, the contract kind of reflects that. If not, just put those questions across and then make a decision if they can accommodate that or they can't, and you need to look elsewhere. Luckily, cohabs have a very good app system, comprehensive, and everything's managed in the app. Including when I first arrived, you sign on into the Wi-Fi network, or you just, ring. But then you get your own key fob. Everything is pretty much contactless. There's no keys that you need to handle. It's just a key fob that the main gate opens up. Also the ground entrance and my room. And you can wirelessly do that if you forget your key fob, or if it's not with you, you can just open it up through the smartphone app. In tune with using tech to make the overall experience very smooth. And I like that a lot. Is there anything in co-living to bear in mind or that isn't so great? Again, I think the house culture, the kind of people is very important and can really shape your experience. We have a WhatsApp group for the house, so we can just flag things up, and also just in person with house dinners and stuff. If there's anything that needs to be said, then we just say, because in the end, everyone is sharing this house. Everyone should want to feel safe, want to feel comfortable, but also need to be respectful and mindful of other people using the facilities and their rooms, because not every room has good noise insulation. Besides it's really just down to the right place that you feel comfortable in, good housemates, good facilities, the prices in your budget, and also good locations in terms of feeling safe or transport. That's really all down to you. But co-living, going forward, 100%, like with all of my future travels, whether I'm solo traveling or, going with others, I would always add co-living as one of the core options of how I'm looking to stay in a place. Before, guest houses, Airbnb for sure. But now co-living just adds an extra dimension, and staying here really opens up that, I'd happily stay, because it's also a lot more accommodating for, expats, digital nomads, remote workers. Like, you've got great facilities. Of course, that's on a property basis, but you would probably get far better quality for your price doing it here versus at times Airbnb, depending on the country, housing market and rental market. But definitely guest houses, unless you're really trying to keep your costs down or stick to a budget. But even in some countries, co-living can be super affordable as well, and it's a really great resource, a type of living and my own experience that you should definitely check out. So when I was looking at co-living in London, the prices were kind of similar, but the contract lengths were just a bit too long to my liking. So some of them, as I mentioned, is more of a longer stay. So you'll find 6 months and 1 year more common than, say, a 3 months or a 1 month. But this is more of a rental contract agreement, so you have to be comfortable with the length of stay. And just looking at other co-living properties, they were just super expensive. Beautiful places, but there's a real premium, and it's definitely more geared towards upscale, high-end professionals. So the budgets were just like really high. And of course, it's not just the room and the place, but they also have services and features included and facilities. And in cohabs, we have a monthly house brunch where they will provide us with lots of different oatmeal, breads, granola, spreads, eggs, and we can all come together and eat as part of being within cohabs, and they do run several cohab events throughout the months that you can join in, or just bringing all the houses together. Like when I first arrived, there was like 200 people going to a bar in Brussels that they organize and have good rates with. And before Brussels, I stayed in Norway, a new co-living spot that was opening up in the Arctic Circle, Lufthansa Islands, and in Tagstad, Arctic Co-working Lodge. And that had a very different feel. It was a lot more intimate, cozy, smaller, more shared sort of rooms, but the quality was good. And way of life was crazy. It was great, really insightful and eye-opening with, people surfing in the morning, not too far from the coastline and the beaches, very far from everything else, with just going out there for nature, being in tune with that, hiking, exploring. And the way of life was very different. So co-living has helped to really bring a different experience to the way I travel. And I've always really enjoyed the different ways you can travel, give really different lenses into traveling and living in places. So even if you're just curious, co-living is great. But yeah, that kind of wraps up my experience co-living here in Brussels, Belgium. You can see I speak very positively of it, my experience, and it's a great way to just either get out with your element, just have some smaller interactions with people to just add some color to your usual day-to-day and not feel too, repetitive, or at times maybe you feel alone or lonely. Like this is a great in-between, and people doing lots of different things, different parts of their lives and their journey. So sharing those stories is always great. So if you have any questions about co-living, my experience co-living in Brussels, Belgium, just sound off down in the comments below. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe and join my Keep Being Awesome community by hitting the button down below and giving this video a big thumbs up. Thanks a lot, Team KBA. I'll see you in the next video. But until then, keep being awesome. Peace.
Just be honest. 내 머릿속에 남아있어 나. Maybe you get it. 너의 맘도 날 찾고 있잖아.